Everyone can agree that 2021 is going to be a year of change. And at Grain Farmers of Ontario, we're going to experience a big change as we welcome a new chair for our organization. GrainTALK was able to take a few minutes with Markus Haerle, our current chair, who has served for the last 3 years, to talk a little bit about his experience as chair and dive deep on some of the lessons learned from the past 3 years. Tell me a little bit about your perceptions coming into the role of chair and even around the board itself.
I had always a good backing from the board. The perception specifically from the board, I think it's been a way that I felt comfortable. I had the backing from the board through my career as chair. The board has never questioned my qualifications, my being basically the spokesperson for the organization, because we have to remember GFO does re-elect the chair on a yearly basis. So it's kind of a report card back to the chair that has maybe another term or two in front of him if his qualifications are actually up to speed. And it always gave me the confidence back up in the February board meeting when the elections were done. You know, it's a breath of fresh air, and okay, we move on. You know, it's keep going as I am. So I think it's just the assurance that I get from the board.
Markus, looking back on the last 3 years, what are some of the things that really stand out to you that happened during your term as chair?
As chair, okay, there's about 80% of it is government relation, public relation, and there are days I ask myself, holy crapes, okay, we made 2 steps forward, 5 back. Like, what are we doing? But at the end, we always come up to find a solution of coming to the goal as we have anticipated, maybe not in the time frame we had laid out. It's maybe delayed, or it might even come earlier than we want, that we expected it. And it brings us to a level of, well, it's easy. You know, sometimes it's a hard work, but also there's a sign of relief at a certain point when we achieve a common goal that we all aim for. And if I can just maybe bring out one specific point that past chairs have worked on, and that's the neonic regulation. Like, we've been struggling with that regulation since the get-go, and when I think back, it was already in the time frame when Henry Van Aken was chair. That's when the onset of the regulation was talked about. Then Mark Brock took over. Well, GFO had to step up, represent the farmer members during the court situation even. And then when I took over, we just kept on pressing on government. Of course, change of government helped of accomplishing the change in the regulation that it's more workable for the Ontario farmer. But I see that as one of the great achievements that GFO in general brought along on, and gives back to the farmer member a bit of freedom, because it created a situation that was just hostile at all time. And those are the things that are sometimes mind-boggling for a chair or a representative of how we can accomplish something, you know, of not knowing when that end result will come. And it took many hours of work from everybody to get that done. But so including myself, and I always have to say, like, a lot of it is riding on the people that we leave behind on the farm as well, that have to take my place to cover off the workload, the stress level, when I'm working for 28,000 farmer members. And it's not always that obvious. You know, like, I cannot park my stuff on the farm when I'm gone a few days. It still has to keep going as my neighbor farm.
I was going to mention one of the things that you just talked about, you know, 80% of the role being public relations and all of the travel involved and all of that. How have you managed to kind of strike that work-life balance and between family, farm operations, and all of the duties required of our chair?
It's a very difficult discussion. Okay, so as we will grow into the role of being a higher ranked representative of an organization, it's a slow process. Okay, so slow changes we don't realize, but then when you fall into the chair position, that's a huge change, because all of a sudden everything is, or a lot more is riding on the chair. And finding that balance at home, well, there's sometimes difficult discussions that need to happen in the family surrounding, and I'm thankful that the family members are accepting that in a degree. Of course, it's not always doom and gloom, but walking away from the busy days of the year sometimes can create challenges, and it's not like myself. I'm an individual that likes to have a bit of control, but at a certain point I got indication that when I leave the farm, I should actually park that control on the sideline and don't control over the phone. And it's true. Like we can't multitask, and maybe since I'm a male species, that's maybe another different thing, that I can multitask, but it is just one of those things that it has to come naturally at a certain point. And I hope that the next chairs take all that into consideration when they take that choice of, you have to divulge 100% to the organization at that time when you commit to it. Otherwise, leave the space to somebody else, I always say. And that's my mindset of I do it 100% or not at all, because somebody else somewhere else would maybe do that, and I don't want to neglect any space from anywhere. And I've been always using those principles in what I do.
That's great advice. I wondered if you had any other advice for the incoming chair.
Make sure that you have good relations with the individuals that you work with before you even take that challenge on, because you don't want to have any stumbling blocks in front of you that you have to resolve. Second of all, get the full backing from your family that you leave at home, and make sure that it is what you want to do, that you have the capacity, the strength, the mindset, and commit fully to it, because otherwise you will not feel the full achievement behind it. And it's important that we feel rewarded, and because there's not many rewards we get through the chairmanship, because there's not a lot of wins, but some of those wins can actually be very rewarding, and you have to sometimes take criticism and just let it bounce off you. I've been criticized before. It made me just a stronger individual. Like when I look back 10 years ago, I was never outspoken. I was always an individual that stayed back. Like I said before, it was never in my thinking of going down that road. But now I don't shy away from a conversation. Even a high-ranking politician should not be an individual that you see any different than a person you work with every day, because they're just doing their job. Your input is as critical than their input is. And you might change their mind at a certain point, that it might be in your favor, but sometimes, often enough, it's not in your favor. And we just have to keep on working on it, and don't be shy.
I wondered too about that when you're coming into the role of chair and the things that you needed to learn. You mentioned government relations. Are there some specific things that you learned about government relations in this time?
It changes a lot. Okay, the government, even though bureaucracy doesn't change that drastically, it's the direction from up on top, depending which party is in place, how your relationship again is with the individual government. Like, for example, the Ford government. Okay, I had high hopes for that government of stepping up, but I never thought that the premier would step up to that high level. Okay, like this was kind of far outreach thinking for myself. Maybe others in the organization had a different view on it, but for me, I learned from the past that government can be very volatile, very unstructured within itself, because the left hand doesn't always talk to the right hand. They do what they want in a certain principle way, because they all have their own agendas, that might be coming from the election platforms. It might be coming from just direction of that government itself. It We have to take it in strive, and adapt to that change. We can't get bogged down in saying, "Oh, yeah, well, it worked with that government, it should work here." Well, no, it doesn't, because I went through federal and provincial elections. It's sometimes difficult to judge that, to where we fit and how we can address our points. And again, I want to always bring up that point. We represent 28,000 farmer members in the countryside of Ontario that rely on us doing the job they can't do every day. And for us, it's important that we have kind of a strategy, but still flexible enough to be adapted to the times that there is a government change. And I have certain relationships now built with ministers, even staffers that are not always nice. Okay, they're sometimes controversial, but they're productive. Okay, and I'm not going to say that I'm going to sit down with all of them to drink a good glass of whiskey one of those days, but it's one of those things it's a working relationship. In a personal relationship, I don't think I would be interacting with those individuals, because they're not the same thing. It's just we're doing that for our farmer members, and that's why it needs to get done.
You talked about having a lot of those hard conversations and about taking risks. And over the last few years, there's been a number of things that you and the board have taken risks or tried new things to get government attention. And I wonder, how much does the support of the board matter when you're thinking about taking risks or you're trying these new things?
That's actually a very good question, Victoria. And it is not even to my surprise that the GFO board has changed in the last couple of years, okay? Because all our frustration level has increased. We need to find different tactics. We have to explore, and it's the unknown of if it's going to work or not. Now, for myself, okay, when I again step back, even 20 years ago, I was very much involved in organizing rallies and being an individual that was present in the way that we do it today, in a more aggressive way, showcasing our frustration, okay, and of no action, of a government not seeing us, of not acknowledging our asks. And when I take that principle from back 20 years ago and I adapt it to today, it's not any different. It's just we are getting more and more people on side doing it that way. And it is just a way of expression. It doesn't mean that we are any different than organizations that don't do it the same way, because I have to refer to our campaign. It was strong. It was very heavy. We needed to grow into it. It wasn't from the get-go easy go. It was, the unexplored world space that was out there for us. And we learned that doing it that way, at least you have a chance. It still didn't give us guarantee, but it gives us a chance of doing something more different than others do. And I think it's something that we have to keep in mind. We have to find the right place to do it. And we don't want to get to be known as that, because we are still doing more than just campaigning for our asks. We still have many parts to the organization that we don't want to kind of showcase the same principles that then we do in a strong campaign. But I think the GFO board has realized that there are times that we have to put those actions in place. It's as simple as that. And we have a young, progressive board that is forward thinking, that don't want to leave any leaves unturned, just to make sure that we have everything covered off as good as we can.
As chair, or even as a board member, I can imagine that it can be pretty difficult during times of hardship, having those hard conversations with members who are reaching out to you personally. Have you had to field a lot of angry phone calls, or how do you work through those issues with farmer members when they are reaching out to you directly?
On that front, I do get negative interaction sometimes, but then there's also the positives. And I kind of weigh that off. It doesn't matter how many I get, negative or positive. It's it depends who it is that calls me and how the interaction is. Everybody stays very respectful still with their mindset. I've never had a farmer that actually hang up the phone because he would be too frustrated. I think it's just a matter of explaining the reasoning why, and why we should think a different way. And it sometimes leads into a way of finding common ground. Even though we have different opinions, doesn't mean that we're going to leave the phone call or the face-to-face meeting in a hostile way. I think everybody still feels the respect of the GFO organization as being that organization that has a good future, that has its, well, everything lined up straight, okay? And we see it because we're an organization that's not just known provincially, we're also known national and international, right? So we have that respect level from a lot of different areas. So making sure that the GFO board also understands that we're not just small within our province is a big part. And everybody wants to protect that of the GFO board and staff and the organization in general.
One other thing, are there any memories or experiences you're really going to cherish from your time as chair?
Being realistic, I always, again, I'm going to refer back to it was actually a very great pleasure to have served GFO as the chair, because as being kind of an individual that was never always upfront, yes, I grew into the role, but still, you know, it's a learning curve. It's still a scary situation for taking charge of something big like that. And I enjoyed that time frame so much. Now, when I look at that one unique part that I'm going to take away, and I'm going to generalize it, it's all the relationships that I've built with the staff, with the GFO board members that are there today, that from the past that I got to know, and realistically, there's a big part of it is having had the chance to work with an amazing CEO as well as Barry Senft. He grew that organization to a powerhouse that I have great respect for Barry, of having taken on that challenge on the get-go. And it opened up the space for a lot of people to either as employees or as board members to voice themselves. And I think for the future that now Crosby is in place, it is a continuation from Barry, okay, of how he can build this organization even further. And I see that potential being there for him, of exploring that avenue, because it's important that we have that. Now, when I step back and say, is there something that I can choose out specifically that made my chairmanship be something unique? I think it's everything. It's just, you know, that there's nothing that I can say of anywhere else. Like it's been sometimes tough. It's been sometimes easy. It's sometimes also frustrating. But those are the things that I took on, and I have great appreciation for everybody and what I have done. And I hope that the individuals on the other side of the camera see that too at the end, or that see this video. It's kind of one of those things. It's very difficult to explain of saying that one unique thing, because there was just so many things that happened through the 3 years, even though they went fast, but there were times they were very slow as well. And especially when it comes to like, I don't live next door to Guelph. Okay, if I look at all my miles and flights that I put in the last 3 years, like it's amazing. Okay, and it's not that I despise the traveling, but often enough I got home and it's like I looked at myself, gee, those couple of hours on the road, yeah, well, they were really unproductive. But when I look at it, the time that I was either in Guelph or prepping for it here at home, those were the productive times, right?
Mhm.
So again, it's finding that nice balance of saying, yes, it was rewarding, and it actually is. And I'm just hoping that the next individual that steps into the role, either in February or in the next couple of years, take a good advice. Don't let anything stop you of achieving what I have achieved. It's rewarding in a high level sense. And I don't think there's anything else out there that's going to do that for you.